What's going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here. Welcome to day 361 of the 365-day graphic novel review challenge. Today, I want to talk to you about Earth 2, World's End, Volume 2. This is the second half of the World's End mega series that was kind of a companion piece slash epilogue to the Earth 2 series that started a few years ago in the New 52. This collects issues 12 through 26 of this series. This is written and drawn by a whole bunch of people. Not all of them are even credited on the front. We have Daniel H. Wilson, Margaret Bennett, Mike Johnson, Robson Roca, Guillermo Ortego, Eduardo Pansica, Jorge Jimenez, Tyler Kirkham, and then I know Cullen Bunn was credited on about half of these. He's credited on the back. I don't see any other names here that were not credited on the front. And something that I found out after I read Volume 1 and after I did my video on Volume 1, this is a weekly series. And that makes so much sense because most of the time, for some reason, DC has this fascination with doing these weekly series, and most of the time, they don't turn out that well. I have not heard anything good about Countdown to Final Crisis, Batman Eternal, Brightest Day. I heard mixed reviews on. This is a series that was just completely garbage, and I heard nothing good about it before I started reading it, and I didn't even believe how bad it was whenever I actually started reading it. The only ones that I think were decent that I read, 52, which was, I think, the first weekly series that they did, if you don't count like Action Comics Weekly from back in the 90s, and that wasn't even an ongoing story. That was different stories. That was more of an anthology thing. But 52, which started in like 2006, I think. And then I haven't read all of it, but I really liked Future's End. I think those were pretty good. And I think that they provided a pretty good model that DC, for some reason, has not followed on all of these other weekly series. With this one, I am noticing that on every single issue, Daniel H. Wilson is credited as the story. And then you'll have like 4 other people credited as the writers on that issue. It seems like Daniel H. Wilson was kind of the mastermind behind this entire thing, and then everyone else was subservient to his vision on this series. And I'm assuming that he is the genesis behind all the awful ideas in this series. With other series like Future's End and 52, you had a whole bunch of writers who were all equally important in the creation of the series. With 52, you had Greg Rucka, Mark Waid, Grant Morrison, and Jeff Johns. Now, even though I don't like Jeff Johns on everything, all of those guys are really top-notch creators, and I really like a lot of what they have all done. Jeff Johns is the only one who I'm kind of on the fence about, but even him, he's done a lot of really good stuff. Future's End has a lot of really top-notch creators as well. This has a whole bunch of guys that I've never heard of before. Some of them I recognize their names from some things. Margaret Bennett, I think that's her name, she did that Years of Future Past miniseries with Secret Wars at Marvel. I didn't really care for that, but I've heard other people say that they're big fans of her work, specifically the DC Bombshells. A lot of people really like that series. Cullen Bunn, he is a guy that I really like, and most of the time he does some really good stuff, but he cannot save this series. This is still really bad. It's not as bad as Volume 1. In places it's as bad, but then in other places it shows just a ray of hope, but then it kind of dashes that hope by the end of this series. So basically, this continues all of the problems that I had with Volume 1, where this is all action and very little character development. I think there is one moment in the entire 26 issues where things slow down just a little bit so that we can have some characters kind of just talk to each other. That is something that was really missing in this series. Something that I mentioned around the time when I was reviewing the main parent series, I think in Volume 4, I said that it felt a lot like Days of Future Past, where the stakes have really been raised and the heroes, they have their backs against the wall, and a lot of heroes are dying, and basically everything is just really risky and really dangerous, and that was what I liked about it. I really liked that things felt dangerous, things felt serious for our heroes, and you could say that things feel serious here, but the problem is things are always going so fast and such a breakneck speed that things don't ever bother slowing down so that you can get a chance to breathe and catch up with your heroes. I don't know why I should care about Hawkgirl here, because she doesn't really feel like a person. She's just a character who is acting on the plot, and the plot is acting on her, but we don't really know anything about her just reading this. Dr. Fate, he disappears for like 2/3 of this 26-issue run, and then at one point at the end he shows up and I honestly forgot that he was even part of this series. There are a couple of characters here who do get some character moments, but it's too little too late by the end. We get Power Girl and Huntress. Their friendship feels very real here. There's one moment where Huntress almost dies, and I feel for Power Girl. There's also Huntress and her relationship with Batman. I really like that relationship. Then you have Dick Grayson and his son. I want to feel for Dick Grayson. I want to like them, and I want to feel good that Dick Grayson is reunited with his son briefly, except that the same plot keeps happening to Dick Grayson throughout this entire series, going all the way back to Volume 1 of World's End. Every time we see Dick Grayson, it's a whole bunch of really terrible people who want to steal supplies from Dick and Barbara, and then after Barbara dies in Volume 1, they just want to steal supplies from Dick. At one point, Dick gives his son to John Constantine and a whole bunch of people that John Constantine freed from the Arkham base, from the World Army. He says, hey, can you guys save my son? They were on a train. He couldn't get on the train, so he throws his son on the train, and then he spends most of this volume trying to find his son, and that was a really dumb plot point. First of all, John Constantine did not even need to be in a series. He was in this entire series for like 2 issues, maybe 3 issues. Then he disappears because he has to figure out why magic is falling apart, and he doesn't come back here, so I don't know what he was even doing here at all. And then the characters that he freed from the Arkham base, apparently they want to take over the world. They want to escape Earth because everything that could go wrong is going wrong, and they want to be in charge, specifically Brainwave. He wants to be in charge, and for some reason he needs Dick Grayson's son to be in charge. He has kidnapped Dick Grayson's son, and he doesn't want Dick Grayson to have his son back. I don't understand it, but literally every time we see Dick Grayson, there's someone who wants to hit him with a 2x4 and wants to steal the food that he has. That is the only plot point that happens with Dick Grayson throughout this entire series. It gets really old really quick. So even though there is a little bit of character stuff there with Dick Grayson just wanting to find his son, I get really tired of it throughout this entire series. I mentioned in my review of Volume 1 that this entire 26-issue series could have been condensed into half that length, and I still maintain that it could have been. There is no reason at all that everything that happens here could not have happened in half the time that it has to happen. I think that maybe that's just because they said, okay, we're going to do a weekly series. It has to be a really long weekly series, but not as long as Batman Eternal or 52 or Countdown to Final Crisis, so let's have it be half as long as those. So it's going to be a 26-issue weekly series. It still does not need to be that long. So much of what happens here could have been taken out, like John Constantine. He's here and doesn't need to be here. There are so many things that happen here that are just fluff, killing time until the end of this series. And then we get to the end, and I think we're going to actually come to a conclusion with this story. Nope, things just stop. It is such a huge cliffhanger here. Nothing gets resolved. It is so frustrating because I just read 26 horrible, horrible issues that had absolutely no meaning at all, and then it doesn't even come to a conclusion. I cannot recommend this volume. Like I said, it is slightly better than the previous volume, but that does not mean much. This is still one of the top 10 worst books that I've read this year. It is really horrible. I know that there is more Earth 2 stuff that comes later, and I have no idea what happens there, if it's picking up with what's going on here. I believe Daniel H. Wilson is the writer on one of the volumes of one of the later Earth 2 books, so I guess I'll cross my fingers and hope that it's not horrible, but it probably is going to be. And when I was talking about other weekly series earlier, like 52 and Future's End, the thing that they did is they would have people kind of working on different characters. For example, in 52, Greg Rucka, he would be working on, say, the Batwoman character, and then Jeff Johns, he would be working on, say, the Elongated Man, and then Grant Morrison might be working on the characters that were stuck in outer space. Each writer had their own characters that they would work on, so even though it was a weekly series, there were 4 of them, and they could all share the load, and then it didn't feel rushed. It didn't feel like the series was just churning along, trying to get to the end point. It felt like things were actually planned out. That is not the feeling that I get here. The feeling that I get here is that Daniel H. Wilson kind of plotted out this 26-issue mess of garbage, and then he handed out issues for everyone to write, and then everyone got to share the blame on all of these issues. And then about halfway into the series, let's start bringing in other writers to kind of help out with this. That's why about halfway into this book, you start seeing Cullen Bunn's name credited in the issues, and I don't know who he had to blackmail to get his name taken off the cover. He probably didn't, but he really lucked up there because this is a horrible book, and if I was involved, I would not want my name on the cover either. This book is so awful, guys. If you are a fan of the idea of Earth 2, of the previous stories, if you read the original series and didn't read World's End, please do not be like me. Do not read World's End. I thought that I was going to want to read it because I was such a fan of the first 5 volumes of the parent series. This is not good. Do not read it. You do not have to read this to enjoy what's going on in the other series. Just skip volume 6 of the original Earth 2 series and don't read this because it is horrible. Really bad. The more I talk about it, the more I realize that I really do not like this book. There is so many loose plot threads hanging here. Big Barda and Kiri, the Tamaranian girl, they are on one of the ships, and I don't know if they escaped from Earth or not. They have Dick Grayson's son, Johnny/Tommy, so I don't know what's going on with them. There are so many other things here. Half of our characters are stranded on Earth, which is now the new apocalypse. Half of our characters are on a spaceship that's going off somewhere to try and start a new colony. There is so much stuff left hanging here, and it just feels like none of this was planned out. It was all just thrown on the page, and we'll see what sticks and what doesn't stick. Really, really horrible book. I cannot say enough bad things about Earth 2 World's End Volume 2. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will be back tomorrow with a different video. In the meantime, you guys have a great rest of the day. Catch you later.